Everyone, the demand spike cometh. All right. Now we talked about this before. We've already have a couple of examples of a couple of companies who could not meet the demand that they had, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But I want to warn against this. You guys may remember. You guys may remember that we talked before all the lockdowns, all the shutdowns, all the shelters in place that Q2 is going to stink. Q3 is going to be flat. Q4, there's a recovery. But your immediate problem is COVID. But your bigger problem is handling the demand spike. And it is coming, and it is coming very soon. So before we jump into that, we're going to talk a little bit about that. That's our key message for today and what we need to do to prepare for that. But what are you, for our opening question, what are you most optimistic about regarding your life or your business right now? You might say, well, there's nothing about my business I'm optimistic about right now. Okay, fair enough. What are you most optimistic in your life right now? Or you might say, business is great. Or business I'm very optimistic about, or I've seen some real signs of things to come, or we've pivoted and it's really working. All right, so what are you most optimistic about regarding your life and or business right now? So please type your answer into the chat box. Julia will read them out when we get to the midpoint, as we do. I see a few being typed in already. So what are you most optimistic about regarding your life or business right now? And please be as specific as possible. So I just got off the phone with somebody, with a client who he had a stretch goal of getting down to 175 pounds, and because he went to a plant-based diet in December. That was a stretch goal. And he says, it wasn't a weight thing, but he just figured one of his goals was want to get healthier, want to feel better. And I talked to him today, and he said, I hit 169 pounds today. I said, wow. He's at 169.8. And I said, holy cow. And he said, yeah, he goes, I wasn't really trying to shed weight necessarily. I certainly could have used to lose a few pounds. He says, I just feel great. I'm on this plant-based diet, because as you guys know, I've been on a plant-based diet since 1991, actually. And he's like, I see what you mean now. I'm like, oh, right on. So that's cool. I'm glad for that. And then we've had other people we've talked to who have introduced new products or service or new ways to deliver their product and service during this time. And they're saying, wait a minute, I'm seeing this fitting right into the future. So life or business or both, what are you most optimistic about right now? One thing I would add is we have a very shady backyard, a lot of trees. We love it for that reason. But we've taken some of this time. Chandra and I have been, rolling rocks, digging in the dirt, till dark each night. And I'm very optimistic about our very, very green little patch of grass in our backyard. So very, very excited about that. That'll be a field trip at some point. We'll do a display there at some point. And so and the other thing I'm optimistic about is from the business standpoint right now is, the crisis management we've done in our business that you have done in your business will serve you well, not during just this 12 or so week period. As I mentioned, this time is here to stay for a bit. I don't mean the total lockdown and all that, but just the business environment where certain industries are going to have to find their way again. Restaurants are going to have to find their way again. It's, and any business who thought, I'm just going to close the doors, COVID's going to come, and when it passes, I'm going to open the doors again with the same message. They're in for a big and rude awakening, I believe. Gibbons and I were doing an interview last week, and we railed against Starbucks. I think Starbucks is way off message. You simply do not open, and then 2 weeks later decide to close 400 stores, and then say, I didn't realize how many people wanted curbside delivery. I've shared a couple of examples. One of our, an axe throwing competitor in Georgia who just totally missed the message, couldn't have said it any worse, offended his clients along the way, and had a terrible reopen. Starbucks is the same in that they reopened, and their reasoning for shutting the stores down, they didn't even have the guts to say, you know what, these are stores we were likely going to close anyway, or something else. They gave a pretty lame reason why they're closing, because they underestimated buyer preferences. Those are probably the 3 worst words you can use after coming out of an 11-week shutdown where you had the opportunity to talk to your clients the entire time, didn't talk to them, and then say you underestimated their preferences. Yeah. What did we say before? Be invisible. If you're invisible then, now you're going to be invisible later. They got awfully quiet for a while. Now they came back out, and they have some work to do. They're a bit off message, not realizing where their clients are at right now, and not realizing where their clients are at right now, and totally missed out on the messaging here. So that can't be us, guys. Starbucks has the opportunity to rebound from this. You guys do not want, under any circumstance, virtually any circumstances, a second shutdown. You have to guard against that like crazy, and we have a demand spike coming. So a shutdown could hit you 2 different ways. One is, a government mandated, revisiting of certain restrictions. That you can't do anything about. Nobody wants that. The governor of Florida today is answering questions, and he had to make a statement. We are not shutting down again, because their cases are, there's a couple states in the country where cases are spiking still. Arizona, the Carolinas, Florida, I believe it's Arkansas or Alabama, I forget which one, where their COVID hit them a little bit later than the rest of the world. But overall, 30 states are either steady or decreasing in their cases. 20 are rising, right? And so you could be shut down because of a revisit to shelter in place and further restrictions, or you could be shut down because you screwed it up, meaning you opened up your office again, or you started taking clients again, didn't follow the protocols, or you weren't disciplined in your safety protocols, not following CDC guidelines, and all of a sudden you get COVID cases within your office, a substantial amount. Right? It happened to a restaurant we know in Florida where they had 3 Gibbons or 4 of their employees get COVID, so they had to shut down. Right? Now, you can argue right thing to do, wrong thing to do, whether they shut down, but that's a major screw up that you were waiting, you were ready and raring to go for 11 weeks, and then you had to shut down your facility because you couldn't even keep your employees safe. That's inexcusable, guys. So we want to be careful. So what's new? Let's talk about what's new. What's new is retail. I'll show you the graph in a moment. Was up 17% in May. It was predicted to have an uptick of 8%, but it was double. It was double the increase that was expected. And now this is traditional retail. So what does that mean? That means people are going out. That means people are going to stores. That means people are buying stuff. This isn't Amazon's up 17% or Walmart.com is up 17%. This is retail overall up 17% in May, bearing in mind many of these stores only opened up for part of the month. This is a partial month, all right? So it shows that there's money out there to be spent and people want to spend it, and people are willing to go out. People are willing to go shopping. And there is no, I don't know if there's any, maybe amusement parks and maybe the professional sports leagues, but there's almost no other industry that was under that much distress than retail. Not only did they have to shut down, but traditional the standardized economy around retail is in a total disruption right now. All right, and it is finding its way, but even they were up 17%. All right, so if they're up, you have the opportunity to be up. The Federal Reserve announced their Main Street lending program. We gave you some guidance about that about a month ago, that it was coming, that they had it proposed, that we're voting on it. That's been signed, and so the Main Street lending program, if you want to look that up, I had a slide on it in a past call. It's a kind of like a PPP on steroids, if you will. probably the SBA on steroids. In other words, they're picking up where the EIDL loans left off. They're not forgivable, but it is a lending program for companies up to, I think, $2 billion. So they're basically addressing the mid-market and above, you know. So if you need to borrow, you know, over $2 million, you know, you can do that. And so they're making a lot of low interest loans and a lot more money available, a lot more money available to the small, upper small and mid-market firms. This is good for us because many of you here service that client list, you know, that market segment. So you want to, that's good to know that they are going to have the funding they need in order to operate. The Dow and the NASDAQ are trending upward on the recent news. So on the recent news of openings, on the recent news of retail, on the recent news of housing, I'll show you a graph on that as well. There is some really good news in the consumer side of the market. And that's what we need to see. The one part that's not so good is in 20 states, you know, overall, the U.S. is plateauing in its coronavirus cases, but, you know, and 20 of those states have some increases in hospitalizations. This is just a graph showing where retail was. You know, look at the first 2 months of the quarter. Look at the last, you know, the last 2 months and then this month. And we'll figure out what the rest of the quarter is when we get to the end of it this month. But, you know, like we said, the quarter's going to stink. It stunk, right? So that 17% doesn't make up the losses thus far. It equalizes maybe last month a little bit, but we'll see where that takes us. Okay. Housing demand. So what's interesting is the demand for real estate right now is actually going up. And if you might see real estate prices, residential real estate prices is up, and housing demand there's a lot of reasons, you know, depending on regional segments. You know, the suburban areas right outside of the hot spots for COVID, people are saying, maybe I don't want to live in the city. I want to live in those suburbs, and they're moving. So, you know, states like New Jersey, Connecticut, lower upstate New York, you know, New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Delaware outside of Philadelphia, right? You know, outside of, you know, again, Delaware and Virginia and West Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C. Look at those epicenters, then look at the, you know, the demand right outside that is raising because some people, or at least enough people, are deciding, maybe I don't want to be in the city. Maybe I want to live out in the suburbs. I think housing starts are up 4.3%, but housing demand is up 25% over its earlier levels. So, you know, there are new homes being built. There are a lot more permits being taken, but and the inventory is increasing, but the demand right now, they can't keep up with the demand. And so these are a couple of signals that the economy is growing. And that there is demand out there. So, okay. So our message today, we're going to talk specifically about protecting your position with your client. Okay. So if you're a restaurant, as an example, and your client is not coming in, you're not servicing right now. I don't mean they're not an active client. You know, so some of you sell products. You know, you're in the product business and you have clients that may not have bought in 6 months. That's still an active client, I would say. You still have a position with that client. You know, the last time they needed us, they bought from us. We service them. We communicate with them. You have a position with them. All right. If you own a restaurant and you're closed and you're not serving a lot of curbside, or you're not doing drive-in, or you're not doing an in-home meal service, you have no position with that client. All right. So what I want to talk to you about today is, or focus on today, is how you need to establish a position so you can then protect that position. All right. Now think about this for a moment. Let's think back to some of the one-to-one conversations we had right before all the shutdowns. How many of you either said it to yourself, said it among your team, or said it to me or your advisor? oh gosh, if we could just get this thing started before everything goes haywire, that would be good for us because we'll already be established. If we could just get started, that'll either make sure we continue through COVID shutdown or we at least pick right back up and we know it's going to happen. If we could just get that PO in, if I could just make that first delivery, if I could just get started, if I could just break ground, if I could just do the first piece. Remember those conversations in March? Okay. We need to be proactive right now and do it now. Okay. Because here's one thing we have to insulate ourselves against is we have to insulate ourselves against a second shutdown. Okay. You can't guarantee in your part of the country or your part of the world that you won't be subject to that yet, meaning your local business community or municipality. You can't guarantee that. So the one way you can hedge against it is you can get something started. You can make the argument that you are essential, right? So in New Jersey, for example, I'll just use a construction example because this one comes to mind, right? When they shut down construction, they said only essential construction. Well, who's to call essential essential? That's a bit of a gray area. And the governor when he made the announcement, he said, and any projects you're working on, let's get them wrapped up as soon as possible. Okay? You're not going to start a new construction project or a project during the shutdown if it's not deemed essential, but you can make the argument that it's essential, or you can at least continue the project if you've at least got it started. Okay? So I implore you, let's revisit the conversation you have with any pending project, any prospect, any client. What do we need to do to just get started to establish a position? Because if they get started, they're going to want to keep going. You are their supply chain. They're not going to want you to go away. Okay? So really important that we start thinking about that because the world is open and you want to get your foot in that door and jam your foot between the door and the door jamb as quickly as possible so they can't just say, oh, sorry, we're closed down again. All right? Now, I get it. If the state shuts you down, the state shuts you down. And if it's immediate, it's immediate. Right? But if you are running a medical practice, for example, and you've done the first half of the root canal and somebody's coming back, you're not making them wait until COVID is over. You're going to complete it. If you've got the PO and the stuff's already landed here and all of a sudden they call for a shutdown, but your stuff's already en route, they're going to finish off that PO. They're just not going to initiate the next one. All right. So let's learn the lesson and let's take from our conversation in March, and when we all would have hoped we would have had a position with a client or in a project or with that PO. Let's just get this darn thing started. All right. What I'm warning you about now is, and you can kind of get the sense of it from what you hear on media is, there's about 20 states or so that go from I'm increasing my cases, I'm decreasing my cases, I'm working through social media, social distancing, I'm not. Okay? And we're really going to know in the next couple of weeks because at the end of the Memorial Day weekend, a lot of states reopened. So it's about now, 10 to 14 days is the approximate incubation time for COVID. So now the cases are on the rise. They're learning about these cases right now. Let's tack on the protests that have been happening around the country where you've had mass gatherings in many cities. You put those two together and the month of June logically will show a spike or at least an uptick in cases. It will. That's just logical. If I just put thousands of people in a condensed area, many of them carrying symptomatic or asymptomatic carrying a virus, it's likely to be transmitted. So it's logical to think that will happen. All right. So through June, we're going to see some of these fluctuations. What we don't know is how some of the states are going to handle it or respond or react to it. Right. We're at a very sensitive time in our culture where there's a lot of overreaction. So you can protect yourself from that overreaction by establishing your position with your client. Okay, and we'll dive into that in just a minute. But I see a number of chats. Julia, would you like to read out some of the things people are optimistic about in their life and in their business? So we've got a bunch.
Yeah, a lot of excitement here. Opportunity for virtual coaching to offer as we go forward. Life is great as I escape to Florida and all is open. I'm very optimistic about our business and its direction. Optimistic about our team and how they're progressing. My personal health and the health of our board of directors. Business is back to growing. Team is awesome under pressure. We're making things happen. I just set up a trip to Key West, which has prompted me to hit the gym again after sitting on my keister for 3+ months.
Technical term there, Chris Brown.
Launching direct-to-consumer platform and the product pipeline from the development team. Excited about opportunities for growth. Optimistic about my kids being able to see their friends and start to get back to normal. Also positive about businesses starting to spend as we move through the summer. Clients getting back to business. Working out 5 to 6 days a week for personal. Starting to get busy at work. Feels good to conduct an interview again.
Cool.
Oh, and that my daughter finally can get her driver's license.
That's a positive thing. I was hoping you would hold off on that as long as possible, but all right, cool. I like it.
Have started Atomic Habits to be more productive, better communication with my staff, and have started container gardening and enjoying it.
Container gardening. You have to talk to Grant Leishman. That's his business. He sells modular green wall systems. So Anna, we've got to get you with Grant so you guys can talk. Okay, go ahead.
And Kelly's excited about having our Stumpy's Eatontown team together in person this Friday for a barbecue and relaunch meeting. Time to de-Zoom.
Oh, you and me both.
From a business standpoint, knowing that our entire organization has built a very strong foundation and we're in a good position to weather this storm and thrive in the future. Personal, looking forward to spending time with my kids this weekend. And then one at the end, also very excited about our new website being in the final stages.
Cool.
Kelly.
Awesome. So we see some pivoting, some new websites. And you're not alone. There's a couple of others that they didn't mention it, but are also launching websites at this time as well. And there's been a lot of development of teams throughout this time. So there is a lot to be optimistic about. We went through a health pandemic. It created financial distress, but this isn't a financial crisis. And it's one now it can become that if it continues, of course, but it's more, this is much more of a health crisis we have to get through. And financially, remember, the balance sheets of banks and homeowners and businesses have never been stronger. It's never been easier to borrow money. And so the government seems to be committed to capitalizing the economy so that we can get back to work. But we've got to establish a position right now. So what that means is, so we've got to, and we have to meet the demand spike. It's coming, guys. So now I want to talk about getting open on a micro scale and a macro scale. So get open on a macro scale means get your business open. Do whatever it takes to get it open. So I know there's some of you in retail, but call your mayor, call your councilman, call whoever is in a position that might be able to help, or give you an indication as to whether or not it's safe for you to get open. Okay, find a way to get your doors open on some level. Okay, now establish alternative methods of service. Okay, now what I mean by this is I was talking to one of the Stumpy's locations actually, and down in North Carolina, one of the partners owns a restaurant. Restaurants can be open, but indoor recreation facilities can't. Well, why don't we start a pop-up restaurant in that Stumpy's location? So serve food and then just let people throw some axes while they're there. Okay, so right now we are a pop-up restaurant. Okay, as opposed to an indoor recreation center. right? They're in the process of talking to the mayor and council if that walks too close to the line or not. There's another location that is in a flex space, and they have these big overhead doors. And as a matter of fact, that part of their store was nicknamed the outdoor area. So do we have an outdoor venue? Well, tell me it's not until I'm told it's not. Maybe it is. So I was driving past here in New Jersey. There's a restaurant that's been closed down like all other restaurants. And they have this little tiny area where they have a few tables outside. Well, I think I would like to own a tent company because I drove past there recently and they have a tent that extends halfway into the parking lot. And now their outdoor seating capacity has gone up by 10x, I'm sure. This looks to me like a 3,000 square foot tent. So I'm sure they went to and it's in the middle of the parking lot. So they must have gone to the landlord and said, you got to help me here. You gotta let me expand into the parking lot, because there's no way to hide this thing. You can't miss it from the highway. It's right on the highway. This thing is huge. So clearly they found a way to establish an alternative method to be open. The key, guys, is get open. Establish your position. Get open on a macro scale a macro means figuring out a way to say that you as a company are open, okay? And so let's establish alternate methods of service. So I just got off the phone, a few minutes before 2 o'clock, with a company called The Brake Squad. The Brake Squad is a mobile brake repair company. Traditionally, when you need brakes, what do? You go to the place that replaces my brakes. Not this company. You call them up, tell them what car you have. Oh, you've got a Range Rover, that's $399. Where are you? We'll come change them out. Yeah, and can you top off the fluids and change the oil while you're there? Absolutely, we can. Okay, so they'll come right in the driveway at your home, or your office. They'll take care of it right there. There's a big trend in franchising that's growing and growing, and if I look at trends, I see this growing even more. Think of how you can bring the experience to them. So can we throw hatchets outside? Can we figure out a way to do that? Can we, Mel, start doing coaching? Can we bring the coaching to the client, and can we go nationwide there? Where can we get, right? So, who would be another good example? Chris Brown in staffing. Can we take the interview process or any of the other in-person processes to the client, right? Rather than people having to come and look at samples, can I send the samples to you? Can I do a demonstration at your place, not necessarily at my place? Can I do virtual tours? Okay. What are other alternative methods of service? So I'm very happy to say one of the trends that's also coming up is the private experience. So one of our clients, Shovelin Mattress, as you guys know, they went to by appointment only in their showroom. And what they found was, you know what their close rate is now, guys? Who wants to do the math? What's 37 out of 40? 37 divided by 40. Can anyone do that math? I put my phone down. I put my calculator in a spot I can't reach it. Who can do that for me? Julia, could you do that? 37 divided by 40? That's over 90%, isn't it? Or right around 90%?
Yeah, someone said 92.5.
92.5%. Their close rate on their last 40 in-office appointments was, get this, guys, 37 sales and 3 pending sales. They could, in the next couple of weeks we'll determine, could be 40 for 40. 40 for 40. Now, I never finished college, but that sounds like a pretty good close ratio to me. All right. They had traditional retail. They were shut down, right? And they were under, reduced capacity. But what they did was we promoted the private experience by appointment. As a matter of fact, they had a couple people that were walk-ins, and they had somebody there already. They asked them to come back. Those people set an appointment. They said, you can come back at 2 o'clock today or tomorrow at 11. They said, oh, we'll come back at 2. And they actually left, came back to a mattress store. They could have driven down the road anywhere else, but everywhere else doesn't have the private shopping experience. They came back, got the private shopping experience, and oh, by the way, the average ticket has gone up at their store. Okay? 48% of their clientele buy their most expensive mattress. That has actually gone up during this time, where the majority of what they're selling. So we had the very fun conversation with Ron the other day where he said, I'm out of material. And we said, what? He goes, I know, I wasn't even going to tell you and Dave that had happened. You warned me. I didn't believe you. You told me about this whole demand spike thing. So now he's got to go hop in his truck and go drive to some ungodly place. Take, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours to get there. So overnight, so he's got enough material to meet his demand. Now, luckily, he can get enough to keep moving. He's lucky. He's got a local supplier, right, who just happens to have extra supply. So he got lucky. But the last thing so he's going to be able to do it. But the last thing you want to do is not be able to meet that demand. So, okay, so we're establishing alternate methods of service. Here's where I'm going to pick on you guys. Okay, nope. Here, where's my video? Bring my video back, hold on. Ah, there we go. Okay, so yeah, I picked on Mel. So Mel, we're going to do video-based service. Anna, we need to do some get some virtual tours on there. Jason, you already do online. But we might even want, and we're already talking about this, so I'm kind of picking on you retroactive because we've already discussed this. But, Jason, his clientele are pilots and private pilots. So they are not subject to some of the travel restrictions or the worries of traditional travel. They hop in their planes and they go from regional airport to regional airport. So they stay out of the fray. So Jason and his company goes in the opposite direction. The opposite direction is starting to hold live events and gatherings, right? Because when you have private pilots bringing their own plane in, where's the logical place to meet? Well, at the regional airport, right? They could be spread out. They could be in a hangar. His particular industry lends itself to doing private events and traveling events because all of his clients are pilots. They all have planes. Well, most. The others have drones, but still, the majority of the people that are going to be coming are pilots of some sort. So we want to do that. Todd and Steven are talking to other companies about being a for-hire fulfillment service, right? So this is a new way to partner with another company, right? So we need to, in the past, they may have been an affiliate or just a salesperson for another company, but now they're reversing the relationship and saying, how can we be your fulfillment agent as well to build on our core competency? Okay, so there's a number of ways. Sorry, let me see if there's anyone else to pick on here. All right, well, there are, but that I haven't picked on already. Okay, all right, Randy's already pivoted. We like that. Very good. Okay, we talked about Grant. Okay, cool. So we want to find the alternate method. Now, here's another alternate method. So this would apply to like a High-Speaco. This would apply to also apply to Kramer Industries as well. Is you can be, and you do it to some degree, but you can actually up the ante on this. Is you can be somebody's managed inventory vendor. Vendor managed inventory, VMI it's called. You could be the third party logistics for your clientele. So let's look at other ways to establish ourselves with our clientele. So pop-up stores are going to be, I think pop-up stores are going to get more and more popular going forward, right? Pop-up stores are nimble. They are obviously easy to set up. They don't require a lot of ramp up. So pop-up stores, again, can come in a lot of different forms. A pop-up store at an industry event just for the day. It could be renting a kiosk at a mall, or a place that's empty at a strip mall if you need to set up temporary operations, be it for recruiting. So RJ Bird could do a pop-up recruiting center on behalf of one of their clients. All right, I need to hire 10 people. Great. Well, we have our normal commission agreement. But what I want to do is we want to put on an event. It's going to cost, I don't know, 20 grand. And we're going to do a pop-up recruitment store at the mall that's ready to get open again, or at the linens and things store. Wait a minute, Carl, they're out of business. Exactly. And they're right next to every Walmart and every Best Buy, which is where that target audience is. So I'm going to open up a pop-up recruiting center at the old linens and things that still closed down, or Michael's Crafts, or Sports Authority that still have the sign on the door. But we're going to start that. We're going to do that as an additional service to our clientele. Okay. And then digital delivery. Any of you marketing folks, you're already seeing this. Our client in South Africa that represents Suzuki did a digital launch of one of their cars, and it was the largest launch in the history of the country for that brand, and it was a very successful launch for them. So let's brainstorm a couple of ways that we can just get in the door and get open and get established with our clientele. So take a second right now and just write down one way, based on what I'm saying. What is one thing you think you can explore with an alternative method, even if you're not sure you could do it now, or maybe this is a year off, or this is just an idea, Carl, just a spark I had. Write it down, or put it better yet, put it in the chat box. What's one thing you think you've either started on, you're thinking of started on, or you could probably look into, that is an alternative method of delivery, or an alternative way of servicing your client based on what we just talked about. And Julia, if anyone puts it in the chat box, we'll read them out loud. But take a moment and think about that right now. Because we want to go back to our clientele. We want to go back to our prospects and say, there is another way that we can work. I was thinking about you. Here's an idea. Let me run this idea past you. As a matter of fact, the digital delivery went so well for our client in South Africa that they went back to them and said, would you be open to doing a strategy session on how you can sell cars better overall in the market? And Suzuki has agreed. So I said to our client, well, have the advisors, we'll just call ourselves whatever you want us to be. We won't be 7-stage advisors. We'll be an extension of you, but we'll come to that strategy session and we'll give you a little bit more horsepower in front of your client to help them come up with, innovative ways to sell cars during this time. And he came back and he said, they agreed, they want to do it. All right. So you get in, you establish yourself a little way, and all of a sudden your client opens up to you a little bit more and is willing to work with you in a different way. Randy certainly did that with her hospital clients in PPE. So well done there. Okay, here, guys, I want to warn you now, because this is a conversation I do not want to have later. All right, I don't want to have this later, and I've had this with a couple of clients. Is when what has happened around the world is, you've heard about a shutdown, right? You guys have heard, oh, we're locked out, we can't work. Nobody has technically been shut down, guys. All the owners are walking through the door every day, sitting in their office, trying to figure out a way to get their clients to buy from them. There's no business on this planet. There might have, Disney World Disney World wasn't even closed. They were just not allowed to take patrons. Restaurants aren't closed. They're just not allowed to have patrons. The professional leagues can run their league. They just can't have fans. They can do it. They've just been spending all this time trying to figure out how to pay their players and union contracts and all that. You don't want to be shut out. It's not a shutdown. You don't want to be shut out. And we've had strategy sessions where we have to come up with creative ways to get back into our clients' facilities or their lives, or back onto their computers or whatever, in order to do our work. I don't want to have this conversation a month from now when you say, oh, so-and-so had a spike in cases, so they shut us down and our clients are there and we're now shut out. Okay. So there's two parts to this message, right? It's so critical, guys. You get shut out again, your 2020 is over. All right. And you're just treading water, hoping to just survive through 2020. We don't want that. We've already experienced a shutdown or reduction in capacity. We don't want anything to do with that. All right. So we want to protect against a possible second shutdown, or maybe I should have written shut out. You don't want to be shut out again. And some of you, and you know who you are, there are certain client revenue you didn't book and it wasn't COVID. It was your fault because you didn't have a position or you pulled back a little bit and you gave the client the opening to say, yeah, you're right. Why don't we just hold off for a while? Only to find out, you know what, we could have done it the whole time, but now the client's not listening to us. We have to think of ways to be more influential to get that client to accept our services. So going back to other conversations we've had, remember our same for same, same for less, same for letter, same for later, and more for same conversation. What can I do right now to help us just get started? All right. Now, if you're already in with the client, that's good. You're already established. You've established your position. But right now, you want to get whatever project you're working on, whatever prospect you're working with, to just get started. If you're doing something, if you're doing anything with them, all right, it'll likely continue into any other correction that might come down the pike. All right, they're going to stick with what's already happening, and they're going to stay away from what's not happening. So even if you can start a project or an engagement by doing the smallest of items, right? So Harris has graced us this week. So let's pick on Harris. Harris is one, in all jokes aside, Harris and I are good friends, and he's one of the top IP attorneys you'll ever work with. And I'm being gracious here because he's that good, right? So if any of you are looking to protect your, get a patent, a trademark, service mark, or get that off balance sheet asset on the balance sheet and package, promote, protect it, Harris is your guy. All right. So, but one of the things Harris can do with his clients to just get things started is doing some basic trademark searches, doing some of the strategic planning around their IP, just doing some of the early, even what you would consider to be onboarding activities. You might want to get some of that now, say that it's under the, our engagement, to get the process started, because someone's less likely to stop an ongoing project than they are to not start a dormant project. If it ain't happening now, they're not going to look to start it necessarily then. But if it's all, in the midst of this, but if they're already established, they're going to want to keep going. Okay. So we want to protect against a possible second shutdown. I don't even want to think about it. I don't see it happening. Right. But because it would be catastrophic to any local economy that had to go through it. So there, believe me, this is one of these times we have government on our side to make sure this does not happen a second time. But you've got to protect against this. You can't have your niche or your client's niche have this happen. Okay. So now one of the ways we've got to do is we've got to be ready for the second wave. Don't be Ron and have to drive 12 hours to go get your materials because you ran out, because you didn't believe your advisor when they said there's going to be a demand spike, that people are actually going to want to buy your stuff. All right. People are going to want to buy your stuff. There's money on the sidelines waiting to be deployed. We've just got to help initiate those. So please be ready as it relates to inventory. Okay. So you staffing, Stacy from True Talent Group, Chris from RJ, maybe you can even help your clients with inventory where you even defer commissions or give them a favorable payment schedule, so they have the inventory. This would be a message I would take to my clients and say, you all want to be ready for your demand spike and the second wave. Make sure you have your inventory of materials, your inventory of talent. Okay. We'll help you in that regard. and we'll make some favorable terms to do that, to get the process started. So, but make sure you have the physical inventory that you're going to need for this initial wave of demand, and whatever the reorders are. So what I would suggest that you do, and Mike and Betty are masters at this at A+. Maybe Mike, I might pick on you for a minute, just because I know how well you guys do your inventory control and your ordering. Is you guys, and Hyspico's in that same boat as well. You want to be ready for this first wave of demand, but you want to have your second wave of ordering processes in place. So Mike, how do you guys do that? I think people can learn from you guys. How do you guys do that where you say, all right, I know it's coming in now, because you do a lot with China, so you have a lot of long lead items. How do you set up your long lead order system so to make sure that you're not going to run out of inventory?
Firstly, it sucks to be me, because I'm sitting on $3 or $4 million of dead inventory over the past years.
Right.
But what I did was I hired great people, and B,
right.
This whole COVID thing has created such a great communication between teams, between purchasing and between sales. And purchasing is sitting in with sales, listening to what they're looking to sell. They're giving out like a list. These are the materials that we now have in stock that we can ship immediately. This is what you can anticipate as far as back orders. This is a new fabric that one of the other people found that they're getting requests for. So the communication has been a very, very critical.
Great. So you have purchasing and sales working hand in hand. I like that. Now, and what are you now doing with some of your suppliers? So your suppliers in Europe, your suppliers in Asia, how are you communicating with them in order to be ready should you get hit with heavy demand and you've got to get things from them quickly?
Many hours of meetings on Zoom, many hours. I mean, Betty and myself, Brian, Brian's on every Monday night with the China staff, with Chris. So our engineer is now working with our sourcing people in Asia to get better understanding of both ways. Again, communication. We just had a meeting this week for the third time with a vendor that basically looks us straight in the eye and is lying to us. We think, we're not sure. We're sending our team out there tomorrow to do an in-house inspection.
Okay.
These are the things that we're pivoting. We're pivoting in those areas.
So you're actually going out and checking the inventory of some of your providers to make sure they can perform on what they're telling you they can perform on.
Well, we have inspectors, they go, but I have my team leader, Edward. He runs the show in China. He's the best as far as being able to look and establish, is this the right factory? Can they have the capacity? He knows the right questions to ask. He understands, what's real and what's fiction.
Gotcha.
And it's difficult in the Asian market because in their culture, they typically are all, they're all trading companies. And when you leave, they take the sign off the door that says they're president for the next meeting that's coming in for the next trader.
Right.
So
right.
very difficult, but having foot soldiers there and having people in the same time zone speak the same language helps a lot.
Gotcha. So great. Thank you for that. Thanks for letting me put you on the spot there. And so when you think about, my takeaway from what I just heard was, even an increased frequency of meetings with providers, purchasing and sales internally, talking a little bit more to make sure that you are just in time, but you have a little bit of just in case, and physical inspections of your providers, especially when you're that critical of a point in the supply chain. So that's good. Now,
and I could just put a pitch in and say we do inspections. So if anybody needs any help with inspections in Asia, we do a la carte stuff there as well. We're established.
Oh, all right. No, that's good
to
know.
We actually have a company called Win-Win Company.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Call it Win-Win. I like that. Doing inspection. That's cool. So if anybody is sourcing in China, and I know a few of you do, so maybe that'd be a good connection with you and Mike. So that's Mike Schreiber from A+ Products. We'll get we'll put that in the Julia. Let's make sure to put that in the in Melissa's email notes for tomorrow.
It's more for Brian. Brian is the contact.
Oh, so Brian, oh, sorry, Brian Collins is the contact. That's good. See? And delegation, Mike, well delegated. So Brian Collins from A Plus Products. So as it relates to inventory, remember one of the things that we said was don't underestimate how much you are the supply chain for your clients. And they're going to want to make sure that you are ready. All right. So you've got to be ready. So check your supply chain as well. Like I said, we are going to hear over and over again. There's going to be, there's going to be a lot of roadside, damage, or road pizza, if you will, by a lot of the companies who are screwing up this time. And I got to tell you, so I've talked to a number of them, and I wish they were either on this call, or I wish they talked to you guys or whatever. And they're just, oh, I'm laying back too much, or I didn't apply for this, or I'm not doing that, or I'm going to wait it out, or I just don't know what's going to happen. Again, I credit you all because you are staying ahead of it. And I understand sometimes you're, like Kelly said, I want to zoom out. I want to de-zoom because there's so much of this, but understand how important it is. Even if some of the stuff either I will say or another call you'll be on later this week is redundant, how important it is for you to stay ahead of this wave, or especially over the next couple months, because I'm telling you, you will pick up the pieces of other companies who screw this time up. I'm telling you, it's coming. All right. And so there's going to be opportunities out there. By the way, from a couple of weeks ago, we have 2 meetings with Russ Miller, the business broker. He's going to meet with a couple of companies to talk about how he can get started, finding some leads for your business for acquisitions. So if any of you guys are still interested in that, contact Russ. His company is basically another salesperson for you to find you some revenue or book of business. So he'll come out and he'll meet with you. All right. So be ready for the second wave in inventory. We've got some there. We talked about talent. Remember we mentioned before, you staff to the valleys, but you subcontract to the peaks. And there's a lot of talent out there right now, guys. So start lining up any subcontractors. Start looking at your busiest time of the year and what would your talent requirements be for that spike. All right, because where you're going to make your money, where you're going to swoop up a lot of extra margin, is in your ability to not turn away business and to accept all business during your peak times. You don't want to say, we don't turn people away. Okay, so let's prepare for that. We don't want to turn away a client we would otherwise, or an engagement or a project we would have otherwise taken on. Okay. And then the last thing, we've been talking about training and drilling, is just make sure your team is well drilled on their processes. So with two of you companies, we have been shadowing your sales team recently on the phone to make sure they're as sharp as they can be. And we found some areas for improvement. And also with some of you, we've been looking at some of your processes. You're launching a website. We did a risk assessment on the launch. If you're looking at a new process, we did some process mapping. So let's look at that. Let's look at tightening up those 3 areas. So, because there will be a spike and we just want to be ready. We have to make sure that we can handle the peak times, right? There's 2 examples, and we won't have to get into them individually. Gibbons and I went over them in an interview. There was a restaurant and a retail store. Both of them. I think one was a Tommy Bahama, and there was another locally owned, independently owned restaurant. They both had to shut down because their employees, too many of their employees got sick. That's unconscionable, and it's inexcusable. I have no mercy on something like that, right? So I saw there are a couple of other things came through chat, Julia. Were there any other questions or comments before we wrap things up?
2 people answered your question about pivoting their space or using things up in other ways. Kelly said they're marketing their large space as a venue to bring your team together safely for a meeting rather than crammed together in a small office.
Right. And on that point, at Stumpy's Hatchet House locations, where they can't have a large gathering for a restaurant, they would blow out the capacity of a restaurant. Stumpy's can actually be, when food or drink are involved, a better venue to meet in than an actual restaurant, you know, because of the way their decor lays out, the way their facilities are very large. So yeah, I like that.
And the other one was build better bi-directional revenue sharing with partners, vendors, and other resources.
Right. So yeah, the and we have a dance studio tenant using our parking lot. I saw that there's a kickboxing facility right on the road that I live on. You go down the street a little bit, and she's running all of her classes outside because she can't do them inside. I'm like, brilliant. Every morning she runs her cones out, everything. She's doing all of her classes right outside. Meanwhile, 2 doors down, the martial arts studio is closed. 2 doors down. You know, I high five her, and I wanna shake the other guy. I'm like, what are you thinking? All right, Gibbons shared a statistic. 70% of China's retail has already gone pop-up and outside market or street fair format. Okay, so guys, we got to get outside. We got to get outside under a tent. We got to pop up. We got to be mobile. We got to take it to the client. We've got to rethink how we get things started. Okay. If they can't come to us for the team building event, maybe we can bring the team building event to them as an example. Okay, cool. So, so I wanted to talk about this message because that we're hitting this inflection point. Right. I think, you know, some of the civil unrest will likely, as these things do, work their course or get resolved, I think, over the next few weeks, right? That is going to, you know, spike some of the cases in some areas, and we'll likely see, you know, a return to the downward trend and more economic openings. New York is going to go to phase 2, the next phase of opening, I believe, in the next week or so. And so we want to make sure that we get open. And I know this sounds so obvious, get open, stay open, guys, but I can fill the next hour with companies who have not managed this well and are closing all or parts of their businesses because they did not get out of the gate right. So revisit, and we've noticed a lot of lacks in safety protocols, you know. A few visits here and there, no hand sanitizer to be found, nobody in the office wearing a mask, nobody even having a mask nearby, nobody asking us if we want one. Hey, Carl, would you like to use the washroom to go and sanitize, or would you please do that? All right, we've seen actually some, you know, a bit cavalier or some complacency in that area. So please circle back on that. Better to have a little bit more of that stuff going on and having it available so you can say you did everything rather than not, okay? All right. So guys, we just as a quick check-in, we're right after past the hour, so we're gonna finish up here. We said we're gonna do these for weekly for 2 more weeks, and then we'll decide on the frequency. I think the feedback you guys gave